Most people would have walked right past the limping, mud-caked dog tethered to a post beside a dilapidated barn. Yet, 8-year-old Emma paused. She didn't perceive a problem. She perceived a soul in need of rescue. An unassuming act of compassion would soon uncover an astonishing truth and culminate in one of the most heartfelt rescues her small community had ever seen. This is the tale of a little girl, a forsaken dog, and the $5 that altered their destinies. Emma was 8 years old on the day she discovered Max. She often declared, "One day, I'll find a friend who will stay with me forever." It was the sort of innocent aspiration children voice, and adults acknowledge with a smile, not truly believing it will materialize. For Emma, however, that day arrived far sooner than expected. She resided with her grandparents in a serene farming community, the type of place with a single grocery store, one post office, and residents who offered waves from their front porches. Her grandfather, Mr. Dalton, a retired woodworker with kind eyes and weathered hands, frequently had her accompany him on his errands. On a balmy afternoon, they went to an old ranch at the town's edge to pick up some spare lumber. As Mr. Dalton loaded the truck, Emma meandered over to a derelict barn. A movement flickered in the shadows. There, nestled in a mixture of straw and mud, was a German shepherd. He was gaunt, lame, and scarred. His eyes, vacant and weary, barely registered a blink. He was tied loosely to a post, as if he had long been forgotten. Emma stood motionless, her heart aching. It felt as though she were gazing at something that had been discarded, not merely a dog, but a life. His quiet despair resonated with a solitude she understood deeply. In that instant, an unspoken understanding was exchanged between them, a silent, urgent appeal for someone to show they cared. When she inquired about the dog, the rancher simply shrugged. Hurt himself. Won't listen. You want him? $5. Emma glanced at her grandfather, her gaze pleading for his approval, silently asking, "Can I? Should I?" But before Mr. Dalton could utter a word, she delved into her jacket pocket and produced exactly 5 creased dollar bills. It was every penny she possessed. And that was the moment everything changed. Emma's fingers shook as she passed the 5 worn dollars to the rancher. It wasn't a large sum, but to her, it was a fortune, saved up from weekends assisting her grandmother with egg collection, sweeping the porch, and taking bottles back for the deposit. The man barely glanced at her as he pocketed the money. "He's your problem now," he grumbled, pivoting back toward his barn. But for Emma, Max was never a problem. He was a promise. Mr. Dalton paused, observing his granddaughter as she knelt beside the wounded dog. "Sweetheart, are you certain?" he asked softly. Emma gave a nod without looking away from Max. "He needs someone," she murmured, gently resting a hand on the dog's shoulder. "And I think he chose me." Max didn't recoil. He didn't snarl. He simply gazed up, exhausted and uncertain, but he did not pull back. That small gesture of trust was all the encouragement Emma required. With deliberate, gentle movements, Mr. Dalton unfastened the frayed rope from the post. Max rose on wobbly legs, his rear paw barely grazing the ground. He made no sound nor showed any resistance. He just followed Emma, one step at a time, as she guided him to the truck. They journeyed home in silence. Emma sat in the back, her hand resting softly on Max's back. She remained quiet, but her heart was overflowing. In some way, she understood this was more than just rescuing a dog. She wasn't merely taking Max home, she was restoring his life. By the time they reached the farmhouse, the sun was descending behind the hills, painting long shadows across the yard. Emma didn't lead Max straight into the house. She guided him instead toward the old storage shed next to the barn, her private sanctuary where she would draw or retreat from the world. That night, it became Max's sanctuary as well. She arranged a soft nest of blankets on the floor, fetched a bowl of cool water, and set down a dish of leftover roast chicken, his first proper meal in an unknown amount of time. Max approached it cautiously, sniffing before lowering his head to eat. Emma watched, perfectly still, unwilling to disrupt the peace of the moment. Afterward, she knelt next to him, stroking his back with slow, deliberate hands. His coat was rough and matted in areas, but beneath it, she could feel the faint tremor of his ribs with each breath. "You're safe now, Max," she whispered. The name had surfaced in her mind without conscious thought, much like everything else about him. As if in understanding, Max exhaled the quietest sigh, not of discomfort, but of relief. The following days were tranquil. Max hardly stirred. He spent his time curled in a ball, eyes open but seeing something far away. Abrupt noises caused him to flinch. He never barked or whined. He just observed. His quietness was not peaceful, but hollow, the kind of silence born from prolonged neglect. Emma, however, did not lose hope. Each morning before breakfast, she would tiptoe to the shed with a book under her arm and a sandwich clutched in her hand. She would sit cross-legged next to Max, reading to him in a soft, steady voice. Fairy tales, stories about farms, even old magazines. She would tear the crust from her sandwich and offer him the soft center, placing it in the same spot every time. Then at night, before returning inside, she would tuck her old stuffed rabbit beside him and whisper, "He'll keep you company, okay?" Her grandparents observed from the window, concerned but saying nothing. They were uncertain if the dog could ever trust again. Emma asked for nothing in return. She simply remained by his side and waited, because an instinct told her that he just needed time. Gradually, a change began to take place. Max no longer flinched when she opened the shed door. His gaze began to track her movements. He didn't move a lot, but something was different. He was present. On the fifth evening, the dynamic shifted. Emma was humming softly to herself as she swept hay from the corners of the shed, her small hands moving with a rhythmic, almost lullaby-like motion. The door was ajar, admitting the warm orange light of the sunset. Max was in his usual spot, head on his paws, eyes half-lidded but fixed on her. Then, suddenly, his tail gave a single twitch. Emma stopped, her heart fluttering. She blinked, wondering if she had imagined it. But then it happened again, a slight, tentative wag, as if he were unsure it was permissible. Emma didn't say a word. She just smiled, the kind of smile that brightens a room without a sound. She sat down beside him and stroked his fur gently, whispering about the school she disliked, the cookies she'd baked that afternoon, and a dream from the night before where they had both soared above the clouds. She didn't require him to speak. She only needed him to stay. From that evening forward, Max started to transform. It was subtle, but enough for Emma to see. He ate with a bit more enthusiasm. He would sit up when she came into the shed. He no longer recoiled when her grandfather's boots crunched on the gravel outside. That initial wag of his tail was more than a gesture. It was a new beginning, the flicker of an emotion deeper than trust, a silent reply to a little girl's conviction that sometimes broken things can still recall how to love. About a week after Max came home, Emma was curled on the sofa with a book while Max dozed on the nearby rug. The television played quietly in the background, showing a documentary on military service dogs that Mr. Dalton had found while channel surfing. When the sound of marching boots came from the speakers, Max went rigid. It wasn't a flinch or a twitch. He snapped to attention, ears pricked, back straight, eyes fixed forward. A switch seemed to have been flipped within him. He was not just alert. He was focused, poised, and ready. Mr. Dalton leaned in, the remote forgotten in his grasp. "Did you see that?" he murmured. Emma glanced up just as Max held his posture, still and silent like a soldier awaiting his next command. The next morning, another surprising moment occurred. Emma accidentally tipped over a metal bucket in the yard, which landed with a loud crash. Before she could react, Max leaped forward, positioning himself between her and the noise. He was low to the ground, his eyes scanning the area, protective and instinctual. Later that day, as a game, Emma pointed her finger at Max and said, "Bang." To her astonishment, Max instantly dropped to the ground and lay perfectly still, as if playing dead. Emma blinked, stunned. "I didn't teach him that." From the porch, Mr. Dalton crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. "That dog's been trained," he remarked quietly. "Not just tricks, but real training." Emma looked at Max, now resting by her feet. Perhaps he hadn't just been abandoned. Perhaps he had been trying to forget. And now, piece by piece, he was beginning to remember the dog he once was. It was the kind of afternoon where summer felt as if it had finally arrived to stay. The sky was a vast expanse of blue. Cicadas droned lazily from the trees. Emma was in the backyard, barefoot and joyous, spinning in the grass and chasing soap bubbles that shimmered like miniature rainbows in the sunlight. Max was lying a few feet away beneath the old oak tree, watching her. He was always watching. Emma laughed as she ran, her dress billowing around her. She bent down by the fence to pluck a yellow wildflower, entirely oblivious to what was slithering soundlessly through the grass just a few feet from her. A snake, long and dark, its body gliding in utter silence. Its head rose slowly, tongue flicking, its eyes focused on the warmth of the little girl kneeling nearby. It coiled itself tighter, preparing to strike. Max saw it before anyone. He acted without hesitation. A sudden, piercing bark ripped through the quiet air, startling the birds from the trees. Emma turned around, confused, just in time to see Max racing toward her, his eyes focused and muscles taut. He collided with her, knocking her sideways into the grass just as the snake lunged. She cried out as she fell, landing with a soft thud, but her cry was unheard. Max whirled around to face the snake directly. He growled, low and menacing. The snake struck, swift and unforgiving. Max yelped, but held his ground. He lunged again, his teeth sinking into the serpent's body. He shook it with vicious force until it went limp. Then, silence fell. Emma crawled toward him. Max. He turned to her, his tail managing a weak wag, but something was terribly wrong. His legs trembled. His breaths grew shallow. Blood seeped from a small puncture wound on his front leg. "Grandpa!" Emma screamed. Mr. Dalton came sprinting out, his eyes widening as he absorbed the scene. The dead snake, the shaking dog, and his granddaughter, safe but petrified. For a brief moment, he was frozen, stunned by the gravity of what could have been. Then, his instincts took over. He fell to his knees beside Max. "We have to get him help, now," he stated, his voice strained. "Before it's too late." Emma ran alongside him, tears streaming down her cheeks, her hand never leaving Max's side. He had saved her without a moment's hesitation. Now, her only hope was that they weren't too late to save him. The old pickup truck sputtered to life, sending gravel scattering as Mr. Dalton sped down the dusty road toward the town's veterinary clinic. Emma sat in the back, cradling Max's head in her lap and whispering through her sobs, "Hold on, Max. Please hold on." His breathing was faint, his eyes fluttering open for a few seconds before closing again. The puncture on his leg was swelling rapidly. The venom was coursing through his system, and every moment was critical. Mr. Dalton kept glancing at them in the rearview mirror, his jaw tight and his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He hadn't driven so fast in years, but on this day, speed was the only thing he could offer the courageous animal that had risked everything for his granddaughter. As they skidded to a stop in front of the small brick clinic, situated between the feed store and the town bakery, the bell on the door had barely stopped jingling when Dr. Reyes appeared from the back room. "Snake bite?" he questioned, already kneeling by Max to inspect his leg. "Yes, a copperhead, I think, mister," Dalton answered, out of breath. Dr. Reyes nodded. "Let's move. He's fading." They hurried Max into the back. Emma attempted to follow, but the veterinarian gently held her back. "You did the right thing getting him here. Now, let me try to keep him with us." Emma stood in the doorway, wrapping her arms tightly around herself as her grandfather placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "He's strong, Em," Mr. Dalton whispered. "He's a fighter." Beyond the swinging door, machines beeped and voices spoke in urgent, hushed tones. Emma couldn't make out much, but she would not leave. She had told Max he was safe. Now, she had to trust that someone could save him, just as he had saved her. Hours crept by. The sun had vanished below the horizon by the time Dr. Reyes came out of the back room, drying his hands on a towel. Emma was curled up in a waiting room chair, her head on Mr. Dalton's arm, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Dr. Reyes knelt before them, a weary smile on his face. "He's stable," he said softly. "It was close, but he made it. That dog has a powerful will to live." Emma released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Mr. Dalton sighed as well, his expression softening with relief. "I've seen many dogs over the years," Dr. Reyes went on, "but there's something unusual about him." He glanced at his clipboard, paused, and then rose. "Come with me." They followed him into the examination room. Max was lying on a padded table, connected to an 4, but he was awake now. His eyes were alert, and his tail tapped a slow rhythm against the table's edge. When he saw Emma, he let out a soft grunt, as if to say, "Still here." Emma's heart swelled the instant their eyes met. Her fear dissolved into a quiet joy. She approached him slowly, as if not wanting to spoil the moment, and knelt beside him. The corners of her mouth trembled into a smile as she whispered, "Hi, buddy." It felt like watching the sun reappear after a long and frightening storm. Dr. Reyes observed them. "Earlier, while I was treating him, I felt something. Scar tissue near the base of his neck, felt like a chip under the skin." He took a handheld scanner from a drawer and held it over the spot. A soft beep broke the silence. The screen displayed a serial number and a name: K9 Unit Ranger 12. Status: missing in action. Presumed deceased. Emma's eyes grew wide. "He was in the military?" Dr. Reyes nodded slowly. "Yes, a trained military working dog. 2 years ago, he was with a transport unit that was attacked during an operation overseas. They never found him. Everyone thought he didn't make it." Emma's hand tightened around Max's paw. Tears welled up again, but this time they were not from fear. "You were a hero before I ever met you," she whispered. "But now you're mine." And Max, weary but safe, closed his eyes. He was finally home. Max remained at the clinic for 2 more days before Dr. Reyes approved his release. His leg was bandaged and his steps were slower, but his eyes, those profound, knowing eyes, were brimming with life again. The instant they pulled into their driveway, Max became alert. His tail thumped against the truck bed. This was no longer just some place to him. It was home. Emma had meticulously prepared for his return, with fresh blankets in the shed, a large bowl of water, and even a handmade sign that declared, "Max's spot. Hero only." She couldn't wipe the smile from her face, and Max couldn't stop trailing her wherever she went. One evening, as the sky turned a golden hue and a gentle breeze rustled through the fields, Emma sat with Max at her side, her hand resting on his back. She looked at her grandfather. "I only gave $5, she said quietly. "But it feels like he gave me everything." Mr. Dalton smiled, placing his hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes, sweetheart, the best things in life don't cost much at all." Max let out a soft sigh and snuggled closer. And in that serene moment under a setting sun, the world seemed to pause for a breath, long enough to remember that it's often the broken ones who teach us how to become whole.